All right, so today, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show a little progress that I've made since the last time we chatted. It's been about a week. Cannot believe how fast a week goes by these days. I've made some progress. As you know, I am focusing on the Call of Duty World at War, the Nazi zombies level, and I'm gonna try to build that out. And so the first thing that I've done is I've started to build out what is the main character, which I have basically said, hey, this is going to be a paratrooper, like World War II era paratrooper. And so I've got into ZBrush, I sculpted out a full character at this point. It's basically a block out with a little detail, and then spent a lot of time in Blender retopologizing and actually getting a rig going. And it's taken me quite some time to get as far as I'll show you here in a second. And then I'll talk about a little bit of some of the other tools that I've been leaning on in a significant way, and I'll say how far we go today. But I did want to start to mention, because one of the things that I'm focusing in on this channel is really talking about all the things that are required to make a game. And it turns out it's more than just Unreal Engine or Unity. It is a handful of many other tools, some of which are game specific and some of which aren't. And I'll get into that some today and more in the weeks to come. So with that, let me show you what I've got done this last week. All right, so let's start in ZBrush. So this is the main paratrooper guy that I've been working on. He's, like I said, this is mostly, I've done a little more detail on the face. If I can zoom in here on the face, you see I've spent a little more time on the face just to try some things. But for the most part, this is very, just initial pass, almost close to a block out at what I would call, I mean, like most of these things are just low poly at this point. If I put if I zoom in here and do the dynamic subdivision, I mean, honestly, I don't even have any subdivision on here. So I'm just at the start of this, but what I'm feeling pretty good about is I've got this guy going on in here in ZBrush. And I got a pretty decent process going to get him and the pieces that make up this guy. So, he's like a 50 million polygon, 50 million pixel polygon points is what I'm trying to say. Guy. I've broken it all up here into pieces and figured out a good process to send him over to Blender, where I am spending time and getting the rig together. And I built this rig up, taking a great tutorial. I'm going to spend a full video talking about the rigging process, and a tutorial that I would highly recommend from P2 Design, Pierre Piquois. But I, got inverse kinematics going on his feet, got a bunch of the rigging controls for his head. So slowly but surely made some decent progress on him. And then just did a real quick pass on, this is Substance Painter, and just a first pass on initial materials in order to ultimately get this guy over here. Let me full screen this. Over here in Unreal. So here we are in Unreal, where I can zoom around and check him out. It's really cool to see, even though he looks like a toy soldier right now, because I've got, no real roughness. The materials are just block out materials, like I said. It's still cool to see in engine how things are going and how things are looking, as I look at like the hair cards for his eyebrows needs some little work, but so far so good. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in a couple weeks really going through the process of passing things from ZBrush over to Blender, back and forth between Blender and ZBrush, because I did all my retopology in ZBrush using the Retopo Flow plugin, which is just awesome. And I'm going to go into detail on that. Building out the rig in here, like I said, going back and forth with ZBrush and Blender like crazy, and then establishing an export path from Substance Painter. So when I go and work on these textures, they automatically generate. So if we go up to here to File, Export Textures, they're going into the texture area in the in my Unreal content. So when I come in here, get out of this, and go into my textures area, it's automatically generating all those maps. And then I just refresh in here. So the idea here is iterate, iterate, iterate. And again, I'm gonna go into all kinds of detail on the importance of iterating because it's just super key. Cool. So some progress made. I've got the foundations to get going. And now, I got to start focusing on a few other things. I don't want to go too deep in any one area. I want to kind of touch a bunch of different things and then move forward. So yeah, made some progress this week. But one thing that I did trip into this week that I think I'm going to have to spend a lot more time on is the importance of procedural generation. I've started really digging into Blender's geometry nodes, but I've also been going even deeper with Houdini's procedural generation mechanism. Houdini by Side Effects is a unbelievable piece of software that's used in the film industry for all the effects. It's used in game industry for effects generations as well, but the ability to generate everything from models to VFX is just insane. So I think I'm going to be taking a significant detour here to really go deep and get my feet wet with Houdini to see how far I can take that, as well as perhaps more in Blender. So we'll see. But bottom line is, I'm going to be going in the next weeks, the weeks to come. I'll show the details of whatever experiments I go through on Houdini for asset generation, procedural asset generation, and go on from there, and also go dig into some details around how I'm kind of managing what I'm doing, because I think that we don't talk enough about those kinds of tools. And I'll give you a sneak preview of the one that I'm going to talk about at length next week. Is a tool called Obsidian. And that is a personal knowledge management tool, PMK tool, that I cannot live without at this point. And I'll be going into detail next week on that one. Okay, so this one's been a little bit scattered, but I wanted to show you the progress being made and kind of early thinking in terms of next steps along the path. Hope you had a great week. Hope you have a good week next week. See you soon.